I'm Casey Wong, and I'm a makeup effects artist for the motion picture industry, mainly based out of LA. Basically, the job of the special makeup effects artist is anything unusual relating to makeup. So any type of transformation that doesn't deal with visual effects, meaning no opticals, everything that's done in-house practically is what we do. So any kind of old age makeup, creature effects suit. Worked on Apocalypto and the new 300, Pirates of the Caribbean, the third one, so that was on Stranger Tides. Professionally, I started in shops at 8, but before then, I saw the James Whale production of Frankenstein. That was made in 1931, and it starred Boris Karloff in probably the best character makeup that's been done by Jack Pierce. I didn't quite know what it was and why it grabbed me so much, but it did. And I think half the magic of me being so inspired by this movie was the fact that I didn't know how it was done. I thought it was like a mad scientist that made the monster, because that's what I saw.
I think a science fiction film pretty well defines itself. Most of the pictures are about inventions or catastrophes outside the normal, experiments gone disastrously wrong.
Forrest J. Ackerman was the man who coined the term sci-fi instead of science fiction back in the early 50s. Before then, the term sci-fi didn't exist. It was either science fiction or scientific fiction, but it wasn't until the early 50s that Forey coined sci-fi from hearing hi-fi on the radio. I met Forey when I was 4 years old, the same year I saw Frankenstein, so it was a very magical year for me growing up. And basically what happened was there was a small clipping in the LA Times that my parents saw about this man that had collected a collection of over 300,000 things of monster stuff. They knew that their son was into monster things, so they're like, okay, this is a good Saturday trip. Forey would always have tours on Saturdays. And so basically from that point on, my parents would keep taking me every Saturday because I wanted to see more stuff. Because I was always interested in how they made it. And at Forey's house, you could see how they made the things, because a lot of these things were falling apart, so you could see the metal armature in King Kong or things like that. So you can kind of see how these pioneers made the stuff. And I was a weird enough kid that I cared about that, you know. He meant a lot to me. You know, he was an interesting man. He was an important man. He wasn't all that respected during the last, 4 or 5 years of his life. He was somewhat forgotten, and I came around at the right place at the right time. I was young. I loved Forey, for who he was. Forey didn't get that kind of love towards the end of his life, and he grafted onto it, and we needed each other. That's what kind of happened, I needed a mentor, and he needed someone to love him. Nowadays, there is a downside to being a makeup effects artist, just because the industry's changing so much. Really, within the last even 5 years, I've seen such a major change of things going digital. Very few people are shooting on film anymore, even. So it's not so much just CGI, it's filmmaking as a medium is changing. And that's really up the ante for the stuff that we do. Back in the day in the 80s, to create a monster, it could be done quickly and cheaply, and it didn't have to be fully rendered, meaning we didn't have to sculpt every skin pore, we didn't have to, put flicks of paint on to make it look like broken up skin and all that finite stuff that we have to do nowadays, because the digital medium picks up everything. So I think people wanting to get into it now, either people my age or younger, might want to kind of reconsider, because there is a portion of our work that's being taken digitally.
I think Casey will probably be one of the people who can emerge at the top of their craft, and the reason is because he has such a great sense of history. A lot of the new generation of effects kids are either already moved on to CGI or are just doing a lot of masks and rubber. And Casey kind of is a throwback to the invention of all of these things that allowed people to transform themselves.
And it's like a relationship, I'm sure. There's good times and bad times, but I wouldn't trade any of those for anything, because it's made me who I am, from one film, and that's why films are so influential on everybody, not just craftspeople, but just on the public in general, that we're creating worlds that don't exist on film, that, you walk out of the theater and you're not in Frankenstein's lab that was totally created. So that's what intrigued me, was creating things that don't exist but giving them life.